Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here. And today we have the brand new Tier 8 Premium Pan-American Battleship, the Atlántico, import to review for you guys today. This is, of course, the current Dockyard ship. She is a super de-duper dreadnought. And, well, we'll see how she performs in battle, but I do have my doubts about her, but hopefully she will surprise me. Before we go much further, though, I must thank the channel's Patreons that made this review possible. I'm not a CC nor affiliated with Wargaming in any way, shape, or form, so I do not get these ships for free to review. I have to fund the reviews via the generous donations from the channel's Patreons or the ad revenue from the channel. If you want to support the channel, the link down below to Patreon is the best place to do that, besides, of course, just watching the streams and videos. And yeah, massive thanks to those guys, especially on this one. Now, this is a fairly cheap dockyard ship. If you do want to whale it, which again I don't recommend you do, because you can get this ship for 5,000 doubloons just by completing the Atlántico combat missions, which, as you guys can see here, it's not really hard. Get 5 set on fire ribbons, win 4 battles. You can do these in co-op. You can do these in super ships tier 5 to 10, so forth and so on. So the missions don't really get hard. I don't believe until the end. 19 destroyed missions, 30 to 40,000 spotting damage. It's a little bit more difficult to the end. 48 million potential damage. Just take the Kremlin out for a couple of days and you'll get that easy peasy. Again, you can do these in co-op. Ranked randoms, tier 5 to 10. So, not really hard missions to do to get this ship, but then you do have to buy the last couple of phases for 5,000 doubloons. And if you actually buy the starter bundles, you get a better deal on them, so you can get the ship for as cheap as $130, which, that's a lot for a tier 8 premium ship, but you do get all of these rewards whether or not you free XP, whether or not you buy your way through it or you grind your way through it. These are the rewards you get. If you do buy your way through it, when you do complete the combat missions, you do get steel as a reward. So if you need some steel, that's one way to certainly do it. Again, a very easy way to get some steel. But anyway, is it even worth it in the first place? Because again, the Atlántico is the main reward. So we're going to take a look at her today. And I apologize if I sound a little funny. I'm under the weather. It's that time of the year, the seasons are changing, pollen is everywhere, so I'm all clogged up and stuff. Allergies are fun. But anyway, let's take a look at the Atlántico, starting with her armor. So she's a tier 8, so she has 38, I wish she had 38, 32 millimeters of plating on her bow. On her stern she does as well. And she gets this kind of halfway wraparound stern armor. That's 102 millimeters, 152 right there. And you kind of get one on the front too. 102 there, then 152 there, but it does not wrap all the way around. Her side plating, upper side plating is 152, then her belt armor is 356 millimeters, 305 millimeters, and then 280 below the waterline. Deck bow is 32, midships is 51, and then 32 at the stern again. Okay, so she seems pretty well armored for a tier 8. Let's take a look at her citadel. Her citadel is below the waterline. That is very nice. And she does have, oops, camera, bit of a turtle back there. Alright. Alright, so it should be a pretty tough ship to citadel. Alright. So armor looks fairly decent for a ship that's meant to be a brawler. And yes, these giant turrets on the side, these are secondary turrets. These are 254mm secondary turrets, which we'll get into in a second. Alright, she has 60,100 hit points, 31% torpedo damage reduction. It's on the lower side. Most of the time these dreadnoughts have usually in the 40s in terms of torpedo damage reduction. Now I was expecting that here, so that's surprising. Alright, her main battery guns. You get 10 15-inch guns that only fire AP. Doesn't know what HE is. And that's concerning because with tier 8 battleships, you're going to get up tier to tier 10 a lot. And when tier 10 and tier 9 battleships and other tier 8 battleships go bow into you and you only have AP, you can't do much about that. Normally, if you were a 15-inch battleship, you could switch to HE and burn them down like you can do in the Palmer and Bismarck Tirpitz, so forth and so on, but you can't do that here. But Who knows? Maybe this AP will really make up for it. So she has a 30-second reload time. The turret's 180 in 30 seconds too. That's actually pretty nice. Maximum dispersion of 246 meters. That's not great. Maximum range 18.6 kilometers. That is a very short range. And then the AP shells do a maximum damage of 10,700 and leave the tubes at 804 meters a second. So that's pretty nice there in terms of velocity. Now for the secondaries, you do get 10 of the 127mm guns. These reload in 6 seconds, have a maximum range of 7.5 kilometers, do a maximum damage of 1800 with their HE. 5% chance of starting a fire on target. That's a very nice base fire starting chance. 21mm the pin, and they come out the tubes at 792 meters a second. Now the big boys secondaries, you get 8x2, so 16 234mm guns, essentially Goliath guns. They have reload time of 12.5 seconds, maximum range of 7.5 kilometers, maximum damage of 3,850, 21% chance of causing a fire, 59mm of HE pin, and they come out the tubes at 761 meters. So I'm very interested to see how these are going to do in battle. I imagine these are going to like obliterate small cruisers and destroyers. Hopefully they're accurate enough to do that. She does get the airstrike consumable for ASW duties. AA rating of 76, that doesn't really mean too much. And here's my big gripe with her, and the source of one of my biggest doubts about her. 25 knot top speed. That is not very good at all. Slow from tier 8 on up is normally considered to be around 27 knots. So like the North Carolina, the Yamato, so forth and so on. This thing only goes 25 knots. It's supposed to be a brawler too. Like, how are you going to get into a brawling situation if you can only go 25 knots? Who knows? I might be proven wrong, but we'll see. 800 meter turning circle radius and a rudder shift time of 15 seconds. Concealment base is 14.2 kilometers, and we'll see if we can get that down. Alright, for her consumables, all she has is a heal and damage con. You get 4 charges base. The heal regenerates 300 HP per second. It takes 80 seconds to recharge and is active for 28 seconds. I thought it recharged in 28 seconds. I was about to say, that's pretty impressive. I think you get 4 base. And the damage con runs for 26. That's actually pretty nice. That's the American Battleship damage con. So the good thing about that is that the entire 20 seconds that it's running, no fires, no floods, nothing will get started on your ship. So that's actually pretty nice. Alright, if you're wondering too, the camouflage you get for completing the ship, which, by the way, the Dockyard animation, as always, Art Department S tier. It's very nice. Of course, doesn't make forking over all the money worth it if you're going to whale it, but it is a very nice animation to look at. But here is the war paint camo. It's pretty nice. It's nice and subtle. The other ones are normally a little bit too gaudy for my imagination. For my mind. But this one looks pretty nice. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and put a commander build and module build on her. I'll meet you guys right back here. Alright, so we're going secondary build, of course, because that's the main focus of the ship. So we went with Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 to keep those secondary mounts in the fight. Damage Con 1 because fires suck. Secondary Armaments Mod 2 to get the range and reload on the secondaries down. Damage Con 2 because fires still suck. And then Concealment to be slightly sneakier. For the commander build, went with Preventive Maintenance to get the main battery guns in the fight. MLG turrets, or grease the gears, in order to increase the turret traverse speed, because in those close-in situations you need fast turrets. Now, you could, of course, take IFHE here and get the 127s over the threshold, but they have a pretty nice fire starting chance. We're going to try and see if we can get that to work, and if you are top tier in tier 8, they do have enough pin to do what they need to do, but we'll see how that goes. Then, long-range battery secondary shells, that way we can get our secondary range out a little bit more. Adrenaline Rush, as always, in order to get that increased reload time as your ship takes damage. Then we took manual secondary battery aiming to get the boost to our secondary accuracy. And then Emergency Repair Expert, we get another charge of Repair Party, which is going to be much needed being a tier 8 and a tier 10 game. And with my last 4 secondary skills, my last 4 commander skills, I would probably pick up Fire Prevention or Concealment. Probably Fire Prevention because the ship's going to be on fire a lot. So now, that gives the turrets a 25-second 180 time, which is crazily good. And the secondaries now have a range of 11.3 kilometers. That's actually a little shorter than I thought it was going to be. And I do have the secondary flag on as well. So that's interesting. And our concealment's now down to 12.8 kilometers. It's actually really good for a ship this large. Okay. That's pleasantly surprising. And with the speed flag, the ship goes 26.3 knots. So 1 knot slower than the North Carolina and the Yami, which is still quite slow. Alright. So we're going to go ahead, take her to the battle, see how she performs. I'll meet you guys there with my voiceover review of the Atlântico. Alright guys, voiceover Mountbatten here, and well, this, dare I say it, might actually be one of the best dockyard ships we've had in a while. It's not all sunshine and roses though, but I would say generally the ship is pretty darn good. Now, the match watching in the background isn't my highest damage match in the Atlântico, but it is most certainly the match I had most of in the Atlântico, where I was double up tier to tier 10, which is of course the worst case scenario for this ship or any tier 8 ship, especially tier 8 battleships, especially one without HE. Now, the match in the background will show you the strengths of the ship pretty darn well. Now, we're going to go ahead and go through each section of the ship again and talk about it now that I've played the ship and how it's done in game. So the armor, and that's very much on full display here in the match you're watching. So, from my experiences from the bow in, this is a really, really, really tanky battleship, especially with that strip that goes almost all the way up the bow. You'll see there's a moment when I'm face pushing a Thunderer and his shells keep bouncing off of me, where if I was in another ship with a more traditional armor scheme, obviously they would have bitten into the 32mm armor on the bow, and of course probably annihilated my ship. But the armor feels really good, really, really, really good when you get in those close range situations with the Atlântico. I gotta give it that. I thought it was gonna be this horrendously squishy ship, and it is kind of from the rear, because there's this, you know, again, the stern section is quite large, and I believe what's happening is the shells are coming from longer ranges when you're kiting out and such, and they're going straight through. Stern armor, there's a little bit more in the back to bite onto, where in the front, if you have better control over how you can present your ship to the enemy, you can kind of force them to shoot at that cheek, but in the stern, it just seems a little more chunky from the stern in my experiences. I never got citadeled in the ship, of course, with an underwater citadel on top of a turtleback. That's not going to happen too much, but the ship feels really tanky. Of course, it eats a lot of HE. Most battleships do. The Atlântico's no exception here. Actually, given what we have here with the Atlântico, it doesn't have a lot of superstructure. If you look at a lot of other tier 8 battleships, especially like the American and the Germans, there's really not a lot of superstructure here for the HE to bite into, or the AP to bite into either. So that's a big plus too, and that's something I was noticing when I was playing. So all around in the armor department, she gets good marks here. Now, the guns were pleasantly surprising. When I saw that 246 meter maximum dispersion at 18.6 kilometers, I was thinking, oh god, this is going to be like shotgun fiasco here. But having 10 guns does make up for that. 10 guns with only a 30-second reload time really makes up for that. And she does have 1.8 Sigma, so that helps out a lot. So the guns are surprisingly decent. Now, there were a couple of salvos where it did get a little shotgunny, but I didn't really struggle to get rounds on target with the Atlântico. And if you have a lot of experience with German battleships, this should actually feel like pretty darn good dispersion. So the dispersion's decent, definitely workable with the 30-second reload time and the amount of guns that you have. And the firing angles on the Atlântico are actually pretty darn good. I mean, especially for a dreadnought-style battleship with 10 guns. Normally in these ships you have to give almost all your broadside to get your guns on target, but with the Atlântico here, you give just about the right amount to where you can stay well-angled to bounce the incoming shells when you're getting all your guns on target. Again, you can't overdo it if you try to get a little too greedy, especially if you want to get all of your 254 millimeter secondaries on target as well. But you can definitely get all your main battery guns on target. Now, the AP shells, stats-wise, they are a little underwhelming. She does have a little bit lower damage than most other 15-inch gun ships do at Tier 8. But again, you do have the 10 guns. And I do kind of wish they let her have her improved AP that she had during testing. That would have been amazing, but of course, with 10 guns again, probably would have been a little bit too much. Overall, the main guns feel really good, and it does suck that you don't have HEs, so again, you find yourself in a couple situations where you're fighting tier 10 cruisers and they're bouncing your main battery shells. That kind of sucks, but with the amount of guns and the secondaries, it does kind of make up for it. But it is a downside, it doesn't have HE. Secondaries, though, they feel pretty good. Now, you could run IFHE on this if you want to. It's kind of personal preference. You know, do you want to put stock in setting fires on enemy ships, or do you want to put stock in actually being able to pin their armor? I tried it both ways. With IFHE, I got a little bit more damage, but again, with the fires, and you never know. RNG can smile upon you, and you could set 20 fires with your secondaries. But that does also come down to actually being able to use your secondaries in the first place. And, well, the matches I had in this ship, most of them were in tier 10 games. And most of those tier 10 games, I'm willing to say out of the 5 tier 10 games I had, 4 of them I was able to put my secondaries to use, but only in 3 of them were they actually able to, you know, like sit there and actually get consistent hits on a target, set multiple fires, and they were pretty good in those situations. But the reality is, most tier 10 games, again, like we've talked about beforehand, it's a lot of sitting in the back, waiting for someone to do something, not a lot happens. And in those situations, it does suck to be in this ship with an 18.6 kilometer range with a secondary build, knowing that in order for you to really get the most out of your ship, you're going to have to basically almost commit suicide by pushing in very hard. But if you're smart, select your targets, go for the ships that are alone or isolated from the rest of the enemy team, and you're able to bring your secondaries into battle. It's quite good. It is. It's, of course, it's not Schlieffen level. You know, you don't have a Spanish galleon's worth of guns on the side of your ship that reload in 2 seconds. No, it's not that good. But it is pretty good. The 254s hit... I'm sorry, the 234s... Man, imagine if they were 254s. The 234s do hit hard. They normally hit for about around 1,800. And you get, again, 16 of these guns. You have a lot. They do hit quite hard. They do rip up light cruisers and destroyers, and even heavy cruisers too, quite well. The 127s are great when the DDs pop up, of course, to kind of eviscerate them. Other than that, you are waiting for them to start fires, and at least on the fire build, of course, with IFHE, they do pin a bit more. But again, that's up to you. If you want to run IFHE, perfectly valid reason to do that, to get those 10 127s pinning a little bit more. Again, it's up to you. It's personal preference. But yes, secondaries are quite good. They're not, again, German levels are good. They do have on the 234s, they do have the improved German accuracy, and then on the 127s, they have the improved American accuracy. So they are more accurate than your average battleship secondaries. AA, I had a lot of CV games. A feels about average for a tier 8 ship. So nothing really to write about there. Maneuverability, this is the big shocker to me. The speed didn't really hinder the ship as much as I thought it was going to. So that's a big surprise to me. I mean, 26.3 knots, it's capable of at least getting around the battlefield. It's not like the battleships where you're just stuck at 20 knots, feeling like you can't get anywhere to do anything. But it does, of course, hinder it in the scenario of having to close the gap to get within secondary range. So it's still a downside in my mind, but it's not as big of a downside as I was expecting it to be. Concealment, 12.8 kilometer concealment turned out to be quite useful, and I do believe if you do take the concealment module, the concealment commander skill, you can get your concealment down to, I think, like, what, 11.9, 11.8, which is just over your secondary range. So you could be almost like the Schlieffen, where when you're detected, you're essentially within secondary range. And the concealment was another big plus for this ship, too, because you were able to, when a CV wasn't around at least dictate the terms of the engagement, because, again, if they can't see you, they can't shoot you. So being able to do that in a battleship was pretty nice, especially one that's not the fastest at its tier. It can kind of make up for that by being sneaky and going undetected and then choosing to run away or at least get behind cover or something like that. And the way I was trying to play the ship is I was trying to use island cover to keep them between me and the rest of the enemy team, go after targets that were by themselves, and it turned out to work pretty well. Again, the first match you watched, I'm not sure if we've moved on to the second one just yet because I'm not editing right now. I definitely was able to do that, and the ship performed quite well in a tier 10 game. And when I was top tier in like the 3 tier 8 games I had, the ship did very, very, very well. When this ship's top tier at tier 8, it's great. It's amazing. You're able to, of course, get your secondaries in the fight a lot more. You're able to have more of a presence because you do have 10, 15-inch guns, and that is a lot of firepower at tier 8. So when this thing's top tier, it's great. And it's also capable of holding its own at higher tier if you're very, very, very well versed in the ways of secondary ships in 2022. So if you've been playing secondary ships and been doing well with them, you'll do well in the Atlântico. If you know what to do. Again, isolate targets, don't rush in, try to flank around, get on their sides, and try to close the gap without them realizing you're there. If you do all that, you do quite well in the Atlântico. So overall, is it worth the grind? I would say so, yeah. I would definitely recommend you guys grinding through the directives to get this ship. Again, this ship can be had for just a little over 5,000 doubloons, which I think is a pretty darn good deal considering you get this ship and all the other rewards for the Dockyard. So I would say it's worth grinding. Is it worth throwing your wallet at? Well, truth be told, if you're considering throwing your wallet at the ship, you're probably more about the steel than the ship, and of course steel is steel, but of course I would not recommend you guys spend $100+ on a tier 8 premium ship. No digital item in my mind's worth that much, but definitely is worth grinding out. This is definitely one of the better Dockyard ships, in my opinion at least. Alright guys, hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 35,000 subs. We just passed 34,500 a few days ago, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.